What's going on, gang? Just wanted to give a quick shout out to anyone that clicked on this video. I understand Must Die may not be the most recognizable name out there, especially if you're not tapped into the EDM scene. So big ups to any fans that may be watching, as well as any future fans who chose to click on this video. Thank you. Lee Austin Bates, aka Must Die, makes his return with his third studio album, Feral Fantasy. Must Die is an electronic musician, producer, and DJ originally from Houston, Texas. He's been active since 2012, with his debut album being released in 2014 entitled Death and Magic. Must Die hit my radar shortly thereafter, and he quickly became one of my favorite music producers. I was in high school at the time, just barely beginning my own journey as a music producer, and Must Die was one of those artists that challenged my ideas of what it meant to be a music producer, as well as opening my mind to more adventurous and eclectic types of sound design. It would be several years until he eventually followed up his debut album with his second major release, Crisis Vision, in 2021. This album was a beautiful piece of work that made me fall in love with Must Die's music even more. It felt so refined, and to see that a third album was on the way so soon, needless to say, it was an exciting time to be a fan. I highly recommend you give Crisis Vision a listen, especially if you enjoy a healthy dose of industrial energy, crunchy dance tunes, and exceptional sound design. I'd say Feral Fantasy is a decent follow-up, though I must note it is a shorter album. It's a total of 11 songs, about 33 minutes in runtime. There's not much lyrical content to get into here, but there's plenty of production choices to discuss. And as always, I'll be offering my thoughts and highlights track by track, of course, starting with the first, here entitled Eat Dirt. The intro track is a brief dubstep tune. It's not even 2 minutes long. It kicks off with some wild effects. It's like we're being sucked into the Matrix. We've got rushing white noise and various glitchy effects. Once the beat drops, we're hit with a face-melting bass synth, along with various types of synth timbres on top of that. Each synth is doing its own thing. There's a low sub-bass rumble, for example. There's higher fluttering sustain tones, and in the background, there's offbeat hints at melodic ideas. The percussion includes a blend of firm kick drums, bit-crush snares, and steady, repeating hi-hats, which bring plenty of energy to the music. Track 2 is entitled CREEPSHOW. The sample heard at the intro sets the tone with its unsettling tonality. Breakbeats soon enter the mix, along with screeching synths as the music gradually builds. The drops hit you with some dubstep. We've got a blend of bombastic drums and wild synths. The percussion features steady hi-hats, thick kicks, and big snares that I associate with classic brostep. There's two main melodies heard during the drop. The first is the plucked synth jabbing the mix with syncopated rhythms. The second melody is a harsh, screeching synth which hits you with sustained tones. The later half of the first drop also features minor changes in timbres for the synths, helping create a subtle sense of progression. After the drop ends, we enter a brief bridge. Bright synths enter the mix as the music calms down by several notches. We can hear a Moog bass, neon pads, and this new plucked melody. This swiftly builds into the second drop, and the following drop is very similar to the first, featuring subtle changes in the synth melodies and instrumentation, and the song ends as soon as the drop is over. Track 3 is entitled Violence. This is a moody techno banger which blends dubstep elements into the sound. We're introduced to the beat early on, with ambient sound effects and samples in the background. The techno drops are particularly nasty with their sinister synths and melodies. There's the main syncopated melody which is introduced during the first build-up, and it does carry over into the drops. The timbre is a hollow plucked type synth, and there's also growls, swells, ambient pads, and fluttering tones which come together to flesh out the moody atmosphere for the drop. The percussion features a blend of steady kicks, richly layered hi-hats, and rides. I love that the kick grows more interesting in the second drop, as the kick hits faster rhythms which feel even punchier. They raise the energy levels of the song and help the mix feel bouncier. I'd say the most important elements to get right in the harder styles of dance music is the kick drum. Must Die hits the nail on the head with the kicks featured on this song, and the sample choices for the percussion as a whole come together very beautifully. Breakbeats reappear to build the last major section of the song. It's the third and final drop, which throws a curveball at the listener in the form of dubstep. The percussion shifts over to a classic halftime dub groove. I love the fluidity of the various hi-hats, they're so tasty together. And beneath that, we've got the crunchy catchy, wobbling bass line. It's the right amount of thick so that it's not overwhelming in the mix. There's also a deep sub-bass grooving along underneath, which adds a healthy amount of depth to the mix. In the background, we can hear subtle effects and ambient pads, which help flesh out the ambience. The song ends shortly after this drop comes to an end. Track 4 is entitled In My Head, featuring Water Spirit. This track is a sleek banger which blends together different elements of various styles of dance music, such as hardcore, acid techno, and raw style. The intro kicks things off with its cold ambience, and the vocal sample is introduced during the section. Once the sample fully enters the mix, there's a thick, fried saw bass which joins the fray along with it. The vocal sample is catchy, it's one I've heard before. Fellow EDM producer Keizo sampled it on his last album for the track entitled Cyber Death, but I have no idea where this sample comes from, so if anybody has an idea, please do let me know. But back to the music. After the intro, the track steadily builds as snare rolls and a synth arpeggio are squeezed into the mix. The music explodes with the first drop. The kicks punch the listener right in the jaw. This drop section features two main kicks. The first one is sharp and slices through the mix beautifully. The second kick is fuzzy and distorted, scorching the mix with every hit. In the background, we can hear a simple, syncopated synth stab. I wouldn't call it a melody since it only plays one note, but it certainly moves like a melody in a rhythmic sense. There's also another rhythmic repeating synth, which holds down a second pedal tone, and behind that we can hear various effects, chopped samples, and of course the main vocal sample. The second drop section features the addition of new synth counter melodies in the foreground. The amount of buzzing synths increases, and the kicks develop into new crunchier timbres. The buzzing is less intense when compared to the first drop section, but the kicks continue to pierce through the mix beautifully. If it's one thing I love about Must Die, it's the way he handles his kick drums. It's truly beautiful work. The outro features stretched out vocal samples and effects, and it feels like we're suddenly being sucked out of the Matrix. Track 5 is entitled Keep You Safe. The opening section introduces the listener to the main plucked synth melody, with subtle percussive elements carrying us forward. Soon, bright pads and the catchy main vocal sample enter the mix, which help widen the sound wonderfully. The plucked synth also swells as if the cutoff filter knob were gradually turned up as it fills the mix with its sleek timbre. The music soon builds into the first drop, which switches up the sound entirely. We're hit with a dubstep section featuring chunky kicks, clean snares, and hi-hats anchoring the music down. The bass grooves here are great due to their simplicity. They highlight syncopated rhythms, which make the mix feel lopsided. There's also various synth growls, which help fill the gaps in the music, with shifting tones in the bass as the drop progresses. I love the fluid movements we can feel in the music. After the first drop, the music breathes for a moment before building into the second drop section. We can hear a blend of pads and distant synth melodies in the background as the catchy vocal sample sits in the foreground. At the next drop, the drums feel largely the same, with most of the progression occurring in the rest of the mix. The synth wobbles take center stage, with other various chirps and growls taking a step back. We can also hear face-melting synth tones in the mid to higher shelf of the mix, providing a good sense of groove to the music as a whole. I like that the section feels more subdued when compared to the first section. Track 6 is entitled Move I Make. This glitchy techno track certainly grew on me while working on this review. It's a sleek dance tune filled with tons of energy. We're first met with the rich 4-on-the-floor house production, with a low synth melody gradually being introduced as the intro section develops. I enjoyed the supersaws heard during the build-up. I'm just a sucker for supersaws myself. I use them a lot in my own music. And there's also a short vocal sample that makes sporadic appearances throughout the song. The first drop brings the 4-on-the-floor drum groove back, and in the foreground we can hear a blend of syncopated synth stabs, synth swells, and chirps. We can also hear a wobbling bass, and in the background there's a blend of pads and fluttering effects as the drop progresses. The subsequent build-up brings the supersaw melodies back, with risers sweeping through the mix as it explodes into the second drop. The percussion here remains the same, and the synths go through some subtle changes. There's more syncopation in the synth melody, and the bass wobbles have a larger presence in the mix. There's also the addition of lovely sustained synth bass, which fills the mix nicely. It's thick but not quite crunchy, and I have to admit I would have loved to hear more of that sound in the song, and the track comes to an abrupt end once this drop ends. Track 7 is entitled You Should Know. I finally get to talk about this banger. I gotta say, I've listened to a ton of music throughout my life, and I don't think I've encountered many songs that I had on repeat because I enjoyed them so much. However, this track managed to do just that for me. Every time I listen to it, I can feel all of the serotonin in my body rushing into my brain. And I would say this track is as close to perfection as it gets. I remember when this was released during the album rollout, and I simply could not stop listening to it. The song is a hard-style banger. It kicks off with the catchy vocal sample, and simple snaps are heard as the only percussive element at the beginning. A subtle synth counter melody can be heard beneath this, and the mix swells once the main synth melody appears. It's a simple saw wave, reminiscent of chiptune aesthetics, just think of retro video game music, but it's packed with so much potential, as the pads and synths in the background hint at what will soon follow. Repeating claps and flashy snare rolls segue into the first drop, at which point the mix explodes massively. The kick drum at the drop is huge, pounding into the mix, and it features shifting tones as the music progresses. The timbre is crunchy with distortion, it's basically buzzing with each hit. In addition to that, there's repeating hi-hat patterns which sound beautiful, and a new brief synth melody appears at the end of every 8 bars or so. The drop develops further with its second half, which strips the mix down and swaps out the kick drum. This new kick is chunky, but way less crunchy. In the background, we can hear a chopped, fluttering effect on the main vocal sample, with subtle pads playing in the background. The following section allows the music to breathe as the drums are dropped completely. The synth pads and low rumbling counter melody from the intro reappear as the catchy vocal sample pops back in. And just when you think you know where the music is going, the chiptune-esque saw melody returns for a second and proceeds to explode into a new super saw timbre. It is at this very moment that my soul leaves my body every time I listen to this song. The vibe is simply effervescent. It is gorgeous. The mix continues to swell as the steady claps bleed through. The music swiftly builds into the second major drop as the mesmerizing snare rolls reappear. This drop blends elements of the first with this newly introduced massive super saw melody. The crunchy kick returns, pounding into the listener's eardrums as the super saw rides the groove beautifully. The syncopation in the melody fits the steady hardstyle beat like a glove. Listening to this section is like collecting all the Chaos Emeralds and going Super Saiyan. It just gets a chef's kiss from me. The kicks also evoke a sense of jump style, if you're familiar, with their varying rhythms which pump the mix with even more energy than before. One minor critique, I do wish this section was a bit longer because it's over as soon as it begins, but that's just a minor thing. The song as a whole is a thrilling rush of energy. Every time I hear this song, I hit the dance from that viral video of the cybergoth crew dancing under the bridge. If you've ever raved with me, you have definitely seen me do it. Track 8 is entitled GRAVEBLOOM. This is a filthy dubstep banger, and it is a personal favorite. The intro is beautiful with its warm and fuzzy synth super saw melodies and pulsing synth bass. This section gradually builds into the first drop, at which point the song changes completely. We're slapped in the face with the crunchy bass synth. It's playing some steady repeating rhythms, and beneath that we can hear a deep bass rumble, as well as occasional growls and chopped vocal samples. The second half of the drop features a lovely chirping growl and new rhythms in the crunchy bass. There's also the subtle addition of thick swelling bass saws, which are so tasty. The percussion here features minimal kicks, steady claps, and simple hi-hat patterns. After the drop ends, the music shifts to an airy atmosphere, with muffled synths and pads introducing the listener to new melodies. This develops into a cool bridge which features soft breakbeats, a somber synth melody, and various effects which help widen the mix even more. I love the fluidity of the breakbeats. They definitely keep my brain stimulated, and this soon leads to a brief outro which features sweeping effects to close out the song. Track 9 is entitled New York City featuring Descender. This is a sleek acid techno tune, and it's quickly grown on me, becoming another personal favorite. The song kicks off with the percussion as the main synth melody is gradually introduced. Its tonality is menacing, and the synth timbre swells beautifully as the mix progressively builds. The percussion heard during the intro features a soft techno groove, which swiftly fades out during the build-up. Risers, white noise, and various synths in the background bleed into the mix as the amount of sound swells until we reach the drop. The drop introduces us to the techno groove in full force. The kick is massive with claps, various hi-hats, and rides all moving the music along. The sounds in the background calm down for the drop as all of the synths do fade out. What is left mainly features the first synth melody of the song from the beginning, but the cutoff is turned all the way down so it's just barely there. I love the usage of reverb for the synth melody. It's closer to the foreground, and behind it we can hear a blend of fluttering effects and rushing winds. There's a brief bridge section that follows, which introduces a new acid synth melody, with risers continuing to swell in the background. And at the second drop, the thick kick makes its return, with simpler hi-hats and rides continuing to emphasize the techno groove. The acid synth melody sits in the foreground and fits the techno drums perfectly. The drop progresses in a fluid manner as different synth arpeggios bleed into the mix, creating an interesting blend of melodies. The outro slowly fades the drums out, leaving the listener to ponder that final synth melody. Its tonality is unsettling, and it moves in awkward rhythms as the mix gradually fades all the way out. Track 10 is entitled Gagged and Bound, featuring Lil Texas. The American hardcore superstar Lil Texas joins forces with Must Die to deliver a bombastic hardcore tune. In extreme styles of dance music, such as speedcore or hardcore, it's essential that the producer understands the importance of the kick drum. Getting your kick drums right is integral to the hard dance experience, and these two producers deliver an exceptional masterclass of a track. A few months ago, I joined an Instagram Live in which Must Die and Lil Texas explained how much care they put into this track as they described their approach to the creative process. It was refreshing to hear them describe the importance that production choices have on the creation of good dance music. That's not something that I hear put into words often, so it was a real treat for me to experience. And if you're interested in trying more extreme genres of dance music, such as hardcore, speedcore, raw style, and other adjacent styles, I sincerely recommend you look into Lil Texas's discography. The guy does not disappoint, and I've been a fan for about 5 years now. The song kicks off with a beautiful percussive melody, a bell of sorts, which carries the listener through the brief intro. The percussion is swiftly brought in for the build-up, which hints at the drums the listener can expect to hear in the drops. The hardcore kick in the first drop is chewy, a bit crunchy when it stutters in the mix. The background is an amalgamation of hi-hats, chopped vocal samples, subtle synth bass, and a synth timbre that slides upwards every time we hear it. It's a tense atmosphere that grows more intense with the second part of the drop. The kick there is crunchier than a Nature Valley granola bar. I love the shifts in pitch and the way the mix follows the kick drum's cues. A new synth is added in the background, a harsh screeching which features subtle sliding in pitch, not as overt as the first synth. The bass also grows crunchier. It's a beautiful blend of harsh synths that's the equivalent of cybernetic alligators fighting to the death. The music breathes for a moment before it enters the third and final part of the drop. The kicks there somehow become even heavier. It's like the listener is being beaten to a pulp by steel hammers. The shredding, sliding synth plays higher pitches here, effectively raising the tension to an all-time high. The kick drums and crunchy bass synths also shift in subtle ways throughout the section. Once the drop ends, we enter an outro, and the music seems to slow down drastically as the hardcore groove fades out. Instead, we're hit with harsh, stretched-out kicks and synths, with chopped vocals in the background and rushing white noise. It's the oral equivalent of a McDonald's Sprite mixed with Monster Energy and a Four Loko of your choice. Just imagine the most vile blend of sound. This is one hell of a beautiful hardcore track, all neatly packed into a measly 2 minutes of music. And lastly, track 11 is entitled Feral Fantasy. The previous track bleeds perfectly into this one, with the fluttering effects hitting the sonic reset button. This track is a melodic bass tune packed with beautiful synths and percussion. The intro hits us with the warm supersaw melody as a repeating bass synth grooves way below in the mix. The percussion features hints of glitch hop with its syncopated kicks and tasteful snare rolls. The hi-hat patterns sound great as well. The build-up section swiftly fades the drums out as the warm supersaw shrinks and swells accordingly. New percussion samples bleed into the mix as they raise the energy levels up beautifully. Sweeping risers and big cymbals thrust the listener into the drop. And the drop is a blend of hybrid trap and dubstep. The percussion features steady kicks, repeating hi-hats, and huge snares. I also love the giant amounts of reverb applied to the snares only at key moments, as it helps the mix pop beautifully. And the main attraction here is the fuzzy synth melody. It feels like a digital hummingbird flying around the mix. Its rhythmic movement is syncopated, which works well with the steady drums. Beneath this, we can hear a tasty and chunky bass wobble, which emphasizes the 4 beats in every bar. After the drop calms down, the hummingbird-like synth fades out, and in its place we can hear a subtle synth arpeggio. The bass wobble and drums continue to chug forward until everything eventually fades out. And what follows is the most ethereal moment of the entire album, as the listener sits in silence for a few seconds and a synth choir enters the mix. The bright timbre sounds close to a human voice, and a serene chord progression is played as sounds of rushing white noise and reverb trails grow progressively louder. Eventually, the music fades out as the album finally comes to a close. Overall, this was a fun album. It's full of subtle moments of beauty, which was a big contrast from what I was expecting. Must Die's previous album, Crisis Vision, was a melodic masterpiece, packed with various subgenres like dubstep, drum and bass, breakbeat, and industrial. However, this album goes in a different direction. The music here feels more subtle. It's about the groove and feel. The taste of the production is distinct. Different subgenres shine here, such as techno, hardcore, raw style, and hardstyle, just to name a few. I can tell Must Die wanted to hone in on styles of dance music he hasn't made in a while or just at all, and I would say he does execute them well. Must Die has always made it clear through his music that he's truly for the culture, he's about dance music, and genre makes no real difference to him. He's one of those rare producers that's able to successfully execute almost any genre of electronica, all while doing so in his unique style. I should also mention the fact that most of Feral Fantasy was written and produced while Must Die was on tour, which helps explain why it's shorter than his previous albums. I've heard some folks say that the album felt underdeveloped, though I'm not sure that I can agree. What I hear is an album that was largely influenced by life on the road, and along with that, the inevitable effect of modern dance music audiences bled through into the music. I know for a fact the music from this album would go crazy in a live setting. It bumps in all the right places. The high points are very high, and most of the album hits a comfortable plateau. Some of the tracks do feel brief, but I wouldn't go as far to say that the material sounds unfinished. I'm also aware that Must Die is already busy working on another project, likely completely unrelated to Feral Fantasy, so I'm very eager to hear the direction he'll take next. I hope to review that body of music eventually when it releases. I've been a fan for years, and I think for now it's important to stop and enjoy the fact that Must Die released a solid album just before 2022 came to a close. And if you've sat here and you've listened to me talk about Must Die and his latest album, Feral Fantasy, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to engage with my content. As I've made jokes about before, no one pays me to do any of these music reviews. I just love talking about music. And on that note, if you are listening to new music or you make music or some kind of art that you really want to share with somebody, you can certainly send that my way. And if you would like feedback or constructive criticism, I would be more than happy to provide that to you as well. And with all that being said, I hope you're having a very wonderful day. Make sure to stay hydrated and keep yourself safe out there. Peace.